Hey, this is George. Have you ever heard of Anchor.fm? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. Number two, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Check out Anchor.fm on the iOS and Android systems.
Need psychotherapy online or in person? Check out tinyurl.com/THT psychotherapy. The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1@gmail.com.
Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business, Chicago Heights, Illinois, despite some members of the council being absent, freezing weather and meeting remotely due to COVID restrictions. On Tuesday night, the Chicago Heights City Council approved a number of projects to continue moving forward the city's beautification projects. Architectural services. With Alderman Vincent Zaranti sitting in as acting mayor for Mayor David Gonzalez, the council approved an agreement for architectural services with Tria Architecture. Under the $23,000 agreement, Tria will provide a space needs analysis of the municipal garage and water department facilities. The company will analyze existing facilities and determine whether an upgrade or a totally new facility is needed, based on current and future needs. Tria has provided architectural services for other local municipalities such as Country Club Hills, designing its amphitheater, storage and fleet maintenance facilities, and upgrading its recreational center. Morton Arboretum Grant. The council voted to accept an award of $15,000 from the Morton Arboretum through its Urban and Community Forestry Grant. The grant will pay for a tree inventory of the city. Funding for the grant is provided by the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program. It offers urban and community forestry grants to municipalities, which are required to pass a tree preservation/protection ordinance before the end of the grant period. Engineering services. The council also approved proposals totaling $842,000 for engineering services for various city infrastructure projects. Chief of Staff Karen Zarant said the projects include sewer and resurfacing work around the city. The council approved an agreement with Grand Capital, North America, LLC, to induce the sale and development of the city-owned real estate at 560 and 570 West Lincoln Highway. Jack Hines, city economic development consultant, said the parcels are the sites of the former Lorenzetti's restaurant and car lot next to it. Grand Rapid Capital has done a number of developments in the city. In other business, Chief of Staff Karen Zarant gave the council an update on January's Illinois Department of Public Health vaccination clinic, hosted by the city. She said about 250 people registered online. The city plans to hold another vaccination clinic, in conjunction with IDPH, in February. Chicago Heights Fire Chief Jeffrey Springer announced the promotion of Captain Tony Mascalino to Assistant Fire Chief. The council approved a redevelopment agreement to induce the sale of the city-owned surplus real estate at 1902 Euclid Avenue, through the city's Abandoned Property Acquisition Program. And the city's city towing services agreement was renewed. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business.
Before we get to the interview, I just want to tell you about our newest sponsor. Union Signs and Printing. Union Signs and Printing is a union sign shop located near Chicago, Illinois, that specializes in the production of corrugated plastic lawn signs used in applications ranging from political and election usages to unions, schools, and businesses. They also produce a vast array of other products, including American-made union-printed t-shirts, banners, bio cards, literature, door hangers, business cards, and trifold. Get a hold of Union Signs and Printing at 815-740-1688 or find them on the internet at unionsignsandprinting.com. And don't forget to tell them you heard about their services on the George Brassey podcast. I am so glad to welcome our next guest to the podcast. Michelle Nelson holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and is currently running for mayor of the Village of Flossmoor. Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Michelle, tell the audience a little bit about your personal history with the Village of Flossmoor.
Sure. My family moved here 17 years ago. My husband is a mechanical engineer and an attorney. He sits on the school board for School District 161. And we have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and a slew of pets. We love living in Flossmoor.
What attracted you to the Village of Flossmoor from where you were at previously?
Well, we used to live in Oak Park, and at the time we only had 1 child in a 1-bedroom apartment. And we were pregnant with our 2nd child. So it was time to expand. And we looked along the train line. I'm a kind of a train junkie. I was a railroad engineer in college at the University of Illinois. And we wanted to be near a train so that we could have easy access to downtown. Public transportation is extremely important, I think, in building a strong town. So we looked along the west line, we looked along the north line, and weren't really finding anything that fit what we needed and what we were looking for. And somebody suggested we look along the south line, and we came across Flossmoor, and we were just smitten by the historic homes, the people, the great schools, the access to the train. It was really love at first sight.
Michelle, you had ran for trustee 2 years ago. Tell us a little bit about that election and how that informs your current campaign.
Sure. So 2 years ago, there were 2 incumbents and 3 challengers running for 3 spots on the Board of Trustees. And what happened was 2 of the challengers were kicked off the ballot for technicalities, leaving just 3 people running for 3 spots. That didn't sit well with me, not having a choice for Flossmoor residents, and also that would mean that there would be no need to have a public forum with the League of Women Voters. A League of Women Voters public forum was canceled 4 years prior with 2 of the trustees running for the position. And to me, going 8 years without having to talk about the issues that were important to Flossmoor and moving us forward is just way too much time. So at the time, once the 2 candidates were knocked off the ballot back in 2019, the only way to have that forum and have that discussion was to run a write-in campaign. It was too late to get my name on the ballot. So I ran a write-in campaign with another candidate, Dave Bruni, and I gathered 903 write-in votes, which set a record in the south suburbs of Cook County. I was really proud of that. I was really proud of the message that we were able to bring to the voters and the option that we were able to give to them.
What was the technicality that had you removed from the ballot?
Well, it wasn't me. It was Steve Kelly and Dave Bruni. Technicality is like one part of the petition said Steve versus another part of the petition said Steven. There were some people who were not listed for whatever reason as registered voters, but they actually did live at the address. So there was some arguments back and forth on whether or not they really did live there, and they did. So I'm not sure why that happened the way it did. There were some other issues too. But, we live in Flossmoor. There's this notion of Flossmoor gracious, and that's not how we treat neighbors. We want to give people the option in an election, and we want to treat people fairly, and we don't want to knock them off the ballot for technicalities.
Can you expound a little bit more about what that means to Flossmoor gracious?
It's this notion of treating neighbors with kindness and respect that you'd want to be treated with. So I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals since 2009, and we meet monthly, and neighbors come in front of us to ask for variances to do things in front of their house, whether it's putting in an extra stall for parking, whether it's putting up a trellis to put some planters up. When we hear these cases, we always try to treat them, maybe it's not what we would do to our own property, but as long as they're not damaging our neighbor's property, as long as they're promoting openness in Flossmoor, then we look at those requests from residents, and we try to accommodate them. So when I say Flossmoor graciousness, it's looking at things from your neighbor's point of view, and not just from your point of view, and trying to accommodate them and help them enjoy their house to their fullest.
Michelle, why run for mayor this time and not trustee again?
So when I ran for trustee in 2019, I realized that the mayor is the person who sets the tone. The mayor is the one who motivates, invigorates, and is really the idea person behind a lot of the works that happen in our village. The trustees, they meet and they vote on ordinances for staff to enforce, but they really don't affect the change. And so in order to be effective in public works management, in order to bring in new development, in order to revitalize our events and do a better job at promotion, I realized that I really had to run for mayor. The only way to accomplish those goals was to run for the big job and not the trustee position.
Michelle, talk about on your website, there's a pretty significant platform of the things you'd like to do as mayor. I was interested if you could talk about the growth and platform, growth and promote aspects of your platform.
Sure. Yeah, so Flossmoor doesn't have an economic development officer like some of our neighboring towns do. And let me back up just a second.
Sure.
Half of our revenues come from property taxes. Only 17% of our property or of our EAV is commercial. So the burden of our taxes comes from residential real estate taxes. So what I want to do is increase the amount of taxes we're bringing in from commercial sources. And we have a lot of great spots in Flossmoor where we can make that happen. So back to my point about not having the economic development officer, we really need somebody to spearhead that because we're kind of at a stagnant stage right now. And the village manager and the head of finance have both made mention of it in recent meetings about the fact that we really need to develop some new revenue streams in order to stay financially solvent and strong. And so the first part of the Grow Flossmoor is to develop a master plan and to identify all areas of Flossmoor, not just the village-owned properties, but also the privately held properties that are lacking tenants, and identify businesses that can succeed in those areas, and then make an active effort to recruit those businesses to Flossmoor. It's a job that you can't do after hours or on the weekend. It's something that's going to take some diligent work during the workday. And I'm confident that we can get it done. I'm confident that we can bring a lot of new business to town and reduce the burden on our homeowners.
So in a hypothetical Nelson administration, there's an economic development officer who's working full time just at bringing economic development to the village.
Well, that would be me as mayor. I will be working full time to bring that development to the village. We can't afford to hire an economic development officer. It would be nice to have one, but we just can't afford it. So we've got to find residents, such as myself and such as some others who I've talked to, who are important members of the economic development community in the Southland, to work together to really kickstart that here in Flossmoor.
Outside of the property tax issue, what are some
Mm-hmm.
of the biggest challenges you think you may confront as mayor of Flossmoor?
So in Flossmoor, we don't have any new revenue streams. So finding those new revenue streams, that's hugely important. We have about $40 million worth of capital projects that need to happen to maintain our infrastructure and our facilities. We did get a $10 million bond successfully passed in November, so that's great. That'll take out a chunk of that. But we really need to focus on saving, spending the money on our infrastructure so that way the supports and the sewers can support the daily lives of our residents. So those are some major focuses of mine. And as an engineer, I'm well equipped and well suited to tackle those challenges and to really keep my eye on that point. We also have some of the opportunities we have, though. We have some incredibly supportive and talented residents who help build successful community programs, from Girl Scout organizations all the way up to the Hidden Gem Half Marathon. So I'm confident that we can work together to achieve some of these goals.
With the $10 million bond issuance that was voted on in November, was that something that you were in favor of, or were you opposed to that?
Absolutely in favor of it. I would normally say, if it raises your taxes, no. We pay really high taxes here in Flossmoor. But in this case, it's necessary, and there weren't any other options. We were backed into a corner, and we desperately need to fix our viaduct, which has been a problem plaguing Flossmoor for over 15 years. And we've fallen behind in our road work. We should be paving 2.5 miles of road to stay on top of it. But we've only been paving about a mile of road a year. So we desperately need the money to help us catch up to where we should be.
When you mention high property taxes in Flossmoor, do you feel like the school districts have any responsibility for that?
They do. They do. They're over 66% of our property tax bill. Plus, if you add Prairie State in there, it's a little bit higher. They do have some responsibility there, and working with them to make sure that they are doing the best that they can do to keep their expenses under control is also something I think that you have to keep your eye on. But we have 2 great school districts that serve Flossmoor, and a lot of great people working hard over there. I think they do a very good job for us.
Michelle, with the election coming up in April, is there other village offices open? Are you running with a slate, or is it just the mayor's office that's up for election?
Sure. There are also 3 other 4-year trustee terms and 1 other 2-year trustee term. The 2-year trustee term is to fill a vacancy that was created when a 4-year trustee had to resign. That term, the 2-year term, is running unopposed. And for the 3 4-year terms, there are 4 people running for those 3 slots. I will not be running on a slate.
Okay. Michelle, tell us a little bit about the Hidden Gem Marathon that you mentioned earlier.
Great community building event. A group of community members got together, and we're trying to think of ways to promote Flossmoor. We don't have a huge marketing budget. We only have somebody who is working on marketing part-time. So how could residents, again, come together? This is kind of a theme, right? Residents using their talents to come together to better the community. How could they come together and make an event that would kind of help land us on the map? And we divided and conquered. People got us on the Chicago Area Runners Association preferred race list. We were certified. We had people doing marketing. We had people doing the giveaways, the after party, organizing the neighborhoods. All of the neighborhoods came together and did certain themes to help runners, welcome runners to our neighborhoods. So, for example, in Flossmoor Hills, they decorated all of their trees. They put out planter boxes. They built them special for the event. In Heather Hill, they had a follow the yellow brick road theme. The water stations were plentiful, and we had music on the mile. So that was my part. I'm very passionate about music. All my children play music. I had music every mile. There was some type of entertainment group performing for the runners. And in our post-race survey, that was actually their favorite part, was the entertainment that went along with the race. It was just such a great day that brought the community together, that brought people from outside the community in to see what a wonderful neighborhood we have. And we had some Olympic runners, some national runners. It was just fantastic. So we're hoping to have it again here in 2021. We just need more great community building efforts like that.
Absolutely. Michelle, the last question I always ask my guests is, what are 2 books that you'd recommend for the audience, and how are they influential to you?
So that was a tough question, just to limit it to 2. And I know I'm going to be judged. Why didn't you pick this book or that book? But 2 books that always stick with me. One is The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon who had terminal cancer. And he wrote The Last Lecture as a guide to his young children, who were like elementary school age at the time, on how to live life. He talked about prioritizing people over things, never underestimating the value of fun, that obstacles give us a chance to show how badly we want something, and not to complain, just work harder, which is a principle that Jackie Robinson lived by. So that was a fantastic book. He was also on Oprah, so if anybody out there who's listening wants to take a quick peek at his book and what he talked about, just Google Randy Pausch, The Last Lecture on Oprah, and you can see his segment. And I dare you not to cry. It is really moving. The second book that really sticks with me, and both of these are nonfiction. I don't want to hear about somebody else's fiction. I love nonfiction stories because of what they teach you about other people and their will. And the second book I picked was The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. He was born a slave and separated from his mother as an infant and from his grandparents as a child. He was abused by several of his masters, all the while learning and teaching himself how to read and also teaching others how to read. He eventually freed himself and wrote several other books and lectured internationally. He fought for suffrage for Black men and was also a trusted advisor for Presidents Lincoln and Johnson. And one of the things that he says that sticks with me is that he would unite with anyone to do right and no one to do wrong. And as mayor of Flossmoor, one of the things that my friends know about me and the people I'm getting to know about I think are finding out about me is that I'll work with anyone to do right. I love coming together with people to build the community and to help others.
Michelle, is there a primary election in Flossmoor, or is this only the general election in April?
Yeah, we're nonpartisan here in Flossmoor, so there is no primary. It's just the general election in April.
Got it. Michelle, where can the people find you on the internet?
Sure. I've got a website. It's www.michellefloor, spelled out FOR, flossmoor.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and both of those are Michelle for Flossmoor. I also have a Twitter account that's just for Flossmoor, and I'm on LinkedIn too. So if you want to find me, you can get me at any of those spots. And my email address is michelle@michelleforflossmoor.com. So very accessible. I love walking and talking. I love jumping on phone calls. Happy to talk to anybody.
Michelle Nelson, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, George. It was so nice to talk with you.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023. Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.